Same with domestic violence. A feminist analysis of the 70s was that if a culture gives men, or I would say any group, but in this case the example is men as a whole, the entitlement socially or culturally, not just through the law, to beat up women, and the culture says, well, that's your lot, or be a good wife, or put up with it, or be silent, that's a form of taking away rights or injustice that is just as serious as if the state takes away your rights. I do think that's an important insight. I would add to you that a woman can beat up a man, a woman can beat up a child. You know, there's no gendering of injustice or cruelty.
There is, though.
Well, okay, do you mind if I just
go ahead,
finish this and then...
Hey, riot time! Karen, it looked like you wanted to jump in there.
I did. You know, like, honestly, in 1904, Theodore Roosevelt started a campaign to bring back the whipping post. And he wanted to bring it back as a punishment exclusively for men who beat their wives. And the reason he wanted to use the whipping post to punish men who beat their wives was because if a man was jailed for wife battering, his wife might suffer hunger or want. And if he was fined for wife battering, she might suffer hunger or want. Okay? But if he got 30 lashes at the public post, he could still go to work the next day, and he could still support her. Right? Now, we have this idea that before feminism came along in the 60s and 70s, that domestic violence against women was completely socially acceptable. Now, I don't understand how one can come to that conclusion when the President of the United States wanted to bring back corporal punishment, which had been banned, right, in most states at that time, exclusively to punish men who batter their wives. And especially since the treatment in communities for men who were battered by their wives, of which there were many, and you can see friezes and artwork from the 1600s and the 1700s that show women battering their husbands. And the treatment that the community gave those men was either the skimmington ride, which was the practice of the community coming around the house at night and beating pots and pans and screaming and throwing things at the house to shame him for allowing himself to be beaten by his wife. Or they put him on a donkey backwards, holding its tail, and rode him around the town square and threw, or strapped him to a cart, and threw rotten fruit and vegetables at him to shame him for allowing his wife to beat him. Okay? And these things have been just quietly erased from modern scholarship and modern accounts of history, right? Back when we thought it was okay to beat your wife. Right? When we thought it was okay to beat your wife, at least when it was extremely egregious, particularly egregious, we'd strap the guy to a whipping post and give him 30 lashes. When your wife was beating you, right, it was you that got punished by the community, right? So I don't know that feminism has a balanced perspective on any of these things. I really don't.
I don't know of any feminists anymore, maybe in the 70s when there were a lot of bad ideas around, but I don't know of any feminists who work on domestic violence who don't take seriously, 17% of boys have been sexually abused before they're 18, and 30% of girls, and every feminist I know who works on domestic violence cares about boy victims as much as girl victims. And the same thing with domestic violence. We call it domestic violence instead of wife beating now because we recognize that it's gender neutral. Anyone can be in an abusive relationship. I think that with all respect, your ideas are a little out of date.
That's not my experience of feminism even today. I have conversations daily online with feminists who have taken women's studies, they've taken gender studies, and they will repeat that 95% of domestic violence is male on female perpetrated. I actually, there was a report by the Ottawa Council on Violence Against Women. And they took data from a Stats Canada study that showed 585,000 male victims and 601,000 female victims of domestic violence who had reported that they had been assaulted in the last 5 years. And when they did their study, they reported it as 1.2 million Canadian
I don't
women.
think that's what we should spend our precious time on, like who's the gender of the perpetrator. I think
Right.
we should spend our precious time on is stopping violence in the home, and when there's an insight about gender that could help us address that, that's what we should focus on positively rather than casting blame. Here's an example. There's this great organization called Man Up, which is global now, and they are enlisting men, which I think is the next wave of feminism, if you want to know where I think it should go.
Great.
And they enlist men, especially young men all over the world, to engage in fighting rape and sexual assault and domestic violence against women. So with all due respect, I would much rather focus on how we can work together and learn together rather than pointing fingers at, at the past especially.
Okay, well, but okay,
Hold on,
so
hold
man
on. I
up,
wanna
man
take
up.
a need
What
to
is
jump.
man
Karen,
up
Karen,
other than
I wanna
pointing
take
fingers?
here
It
just
seems
for a
to me
second.
that this is more a conversation about violence rather than about genders. And I don't like the name feminism because it's not about women, it's about everyone.
I don't like
And
the name man up.